Welcome to this installment of Zarathustra Summer. This section is and it's kind of taking from a few different sections and trying to draw out some of Nietzsche's views of the last man. And the last man is often described as something which is superfluous. So it's sort of excessive, but not excessive in a qualitative way, but just excessive in a kind of quantitative way. Like the last man, he's not. The term "last" is like um, he's there, but he's not qualitatively distinct or higher. He's just there. So there's a kind of superfluousness to the last man, and last also would suggest like the end of a line, which would suggest um, like a kind of a direction which has lost its power, lost its quality, lost its purpose. The last, it's the end. Not the end is in like the final state, but the end in a sense of meaninglessness and superfluousness. So that's the hold on. Okay, it's fine. Yeah. That's the kind of basic premise of this part. And so one section Zarathustra has called "Of the New Idol," and the new idol is kind of referred to as a state, but I don't think we need to think of it as a state in like specifically in the sense of like the government. Um, I think what he's trying to get at here is like collectives, corporates, and collectives that have no sense of verticality to them. They've got no sense of meaningful higher purpose to them. They don't build upon anything great to create something more. They don't lay the foundation for anything great. They're these sorts of like um, sorts of well, I'll just go through it and then we can try to make a description after. Um, One way we could think of this though is they're kind of non-vertical collectives. So if you remember in one of the sections, Zarathustra was talking about the last man, and he said that the last man, they huddle together for warmth, but for nothing else. For warmth and entertainment, they kind of have this herd mentality to them. They don't come together um, for example, like the philosophers in ancient Greece would have come together to, try to refute their assumptions about something like justice or beauty in order to get to the real thing. They don't come together for, like glory and conquest. They don't come together for, building great things. Like they don't come together for anything that kind of has like a qualitative point to it. They only come together for warmth, for entertainment. So it's very much like a kind of consumer motif going on here too, right? Or security even. I think this fits actually quite well with the um, security society. A society which is only kind of like our collective and cooperative actions and activities and relations only respond to like mere vulgar, self-preservation and not anything higher. Which is a point that Paul Virilio makes about the state of state of emergency. It's a kind of state where mere survival is put over kind of life or anything with a kind of qualitative um, uh, purpose to it. So, um, so this section titled "Of the New Idol," um, he says, I was thinking of where to start from. Well, he kind of describes the state as something that lures people. So he says the state is the coldest of all cold monsters. Coldly it lies too, and this lie creeps from its mouth. I, the state, am the people. Um, it is a lie. It was creators who created people and hung a faith and a love over them. Thus they served life. It is destroyers who set snares for many and call it the state. They hang a sword and 100 desires over them. He continues on. He says, confusion is the language of good and evil. I offer you this sign and the sign of the state. Truly, this sign indicates the will to death. Truly, it beckons the preachers of death. Many too many are born. The state was invented for the superfluous. The state is described as something that wants to lure you into the many too many. And this is kind of how he's describing this herd or this crowd as the many too many. And he continues and says, just look at these superfluous people. They are always ill. They vomit their bile and call it a newspaper. They devour one another and cannot even digest themselves. Just look at these superfluous people. They acquire wealth and make themselves poorer with it. They desire power, and especially the lever of power, plenty of money. These impotent people. See them clamber, these nimble apes. They clamber over one another and scuffle into the mud and the abyss. They all strive towards the throne. It is a madness they have, as it happens, as if happiness sat upon the throne. So he's kind of describing people that seem like very like chaotically, well, kind of degenerate, but also lost. Like they don't know what to do with anything. Like they have money and they make themselves poor. They kind of want power just for power's sake, and they don't really know what to do with it. And they think that like this will make them happy, and it doesn't. And they're really confused when it doesn't make them happy. So it's kind of chaotic and lost kind of people. And of course, then you've got the kind of dehumanizing. I don't mean that as like a criticism. I think that this is actually a good thing. If people like are arrogant, you know, and they think that they're so civilized and higher than others, and you call them an ape, that's right. It's kind of a good thing. He's undermining their sense of higherness and their sense of enlightenment, and he's undermining the sense of humanity which they identify with by calling them apes, you know. So I've been over that in earlier segments anyway. So, but yeah, these people are extremely lost. They're extremely they don't know what to do with what they have, and I think that's an important thing, and it's very relevant to our society today. You know, if you think of like huge amounts of wealth that then turn into like economic downturns within like a generation. Like if we just have more of something, it will be better. And I think he's very much undermining this. That actually, no, if you just think that, you're going to destroy what you have, actually. You're going to actually lose what you have. Simply more is not better. Actually, simply more is dangerous and potentially destructive and potentially degrades a culture, a people, a soul, an individual, whatever. So he says, he continues, and he says, a free life still remains for great souls. Truly, he who possesses little is so much less possessed. Praised be a moderate poverty. Only there where the state ceases does the man who is not superfluous begin. Does the song of the necessary man, the unique and the irreplaceable melody begin. So I suppose what he's saying there could be interpreted like, you know, and it's almost like in a kind of ascetic thing as well to say, right? That he who possesses little is so much less possessed. It reminds me of the line of Fight Club where he says, the things you own end up owning you. And like all of that sort of rhetoric would touch upon the false assumption that more quantitatively more is simply better. And actually, when people seem to get wrapped up in it's not just quantitative. I think you could also call it pure relativity. Pure relativity in the sense of like, you know, envy. Like my neighbor has this new car, I want a new car. This is and this kind of reminds me of the NPC. You know, he's kind of automaton. He has new car. He has this opinion. I must have this opinion, or the opposite opinion. This completely reactive kind of being. And uh, the we could also contextualize the kind of dehumanizing rhetoric of apes and so on, which should remind us of the chapter where he said that man is more of an ape now than the ape, and all this kind of playing around and kind of chaotically mushing up the ontological categories of man, animal, beast. Animal. See, he's mixing them up for me now. I don't even know what the fuck is up and down anymore. Animal, man, God. So, because in a later section he says, I have the quote written on the laptop. If a goal for humanity is still lacking, is there not still lacking humanity itself? Like within this chaos of people, of these nimble apes fighting for the throne without understanding what it's about, wanting wealth without knowing what to do with it, and so on and so forth. We're sort of degenerating ourselves into an animal-like state because we've lost a sense of qualitative distinction, and we've lost an authentic trajectory of more. Like more should mean more in a qualitative sense, not just quantitative sense. And without understanding that, we risk dehumanizing ourselves. Like, never mind what kind of rhetoric someone might use, but like quite literally. And there's another section where he talks about. Hold on, I'm trying to find it now. Yeah, marriage and marriage and children, and actually Peter Sloterdijk brings this up in his book You Must Change Your Life, and he kind of talks about I think what he calls upward propagation or something like that. So this is where Zarathustra, and the same theme comes out here, because this is where Zarathustra talks about kind of marriage and having children, which is a reproductive purpose. So again, you have another theme, which is people coming together to create something, or to achieve something, or do something. Why? Like, are you just coming together for warmth and entertainment, or are you coming together because there's some authentic, qualitative purpose for it? So same theme is coming through here, but instead of the state, you have basically the family. And this is very interesting because there's a lot of conservatives don't ask themselves. Like, I have a feeling if I had like cut the video here, most kind of conservatives or people are kind of like, especially the brand of conservatism that is very kind of market friendly, but like anti bureaucracy, or like anti the state, like that kind of neocon conservative influence. People will be like, oh yeah, like everything he says right, but actually no, he's applying this to the family as well. So this is important. This is important for all the trads out there. So he says, I have a question for you alone, my brother. I throw this question like a plummet into your soul to discover how deep it is. You are young and desire marriage and children. So this is very good advice for young men as well. But I ask you, are you a man who ought to desire a child? Are you the victor, the self-conqueror, the ruler of your senses, and the lord of your virtues? Or do the animal and necessity speak from your desire, or isolation, or disharmony with yourself? So, okay, so break those down. Like, animal and necessity speak. So, thirsty. People be horny, right? This is what he's saying. Isolation. Are you just kind of lonely? Do you want someone around? Disharmony with yourself. You want someone to distract you from yourself. You're in a state of conflict. You're not comfortable being alone, and therefore you want someone kind of around the whole time to kind of distract you or comfort you or something. So I think these are the kind of lower reasons to seek out a wife, or I suppose if you're a woman, like a husband, or so like these would be the lower reasons, right? So and then later on he says, you should propagate yourself not only forward but upward. May the garden of marriage help you to do this. Let this be the meaning and the truth of your marriage. But what but that which the many too many, the superfluous, call marriage, what shall we call this? This poverty of soul in partnership. Poverty of soul in partnership. This filth of soul in partnership. This miserable ease in partnership. All this they call marriage. And they say their marriages are made in heaven. So, and then he gives a little warning about men who don't really follow this advice. And he says, he says, that man used to be reserved in his dealings and fastidious in his choice. But all that at once he spoilt his company, and once for all he calls it his marriage. That man sought a handmaiden with the virtues of an angel, but all at once he became the handmaiden of a woman, and now he deeds to become an angel too. So, basically being a simp. There's a warning against being a simp here. And when he's saying being a simp, he doesn't mean probably what we would think we would mean today. He sort of means like I suppose, like, why would, people talk about being a simp today? They probably say something like, I don't know how you would explain that, but like for him the problem is coming together for these lesser purposes. If you do that, I suppose the other problems are going to be there inevitably. But if you come together for the qualitative purpose of reproducing something which has like a sort of a higher significance to it, then you will be immunized against the risk of simping. I think that's what he's trying to say. So again, it kind of comes back to the theme of like, why are we coming together? Is it just for warmth and entertainment, or any of the other vulgar motivations I already described, or is it for something more? And if it's not for something more, we meet the superfluous man. And this is the sort of educational, governing, and reproductive mechanism of the last man. This kind of chaotic sense of superfluousness. And then you have to ask yourself again. This kind of begs the question of the death of God, and the sort of social organizations, institutions that have lost their sense of purpose, conquest, highness, transcendence, however else we want to describe the upward propagation, the qualitative propagation. So I suppose the opposite to this, if you were going to try to like solve this problem, the opposite to this would be to formulate collectives and people who are coming together for something which has what we could call like a vertical what Peter Sloterdijk calls in his book You Must Save Your Life, a kind of vertical tension to it, a sense in which there's a sort of energy within the social relations which draw upwards in some authentic sense. And this is an interesting spanner to put in the works if you think about like individualism versus collectivism versus communitarianism and so on, because like all of this argument is kind of just pointless if you don't actually discuss, let's say, the kind of vertical substance which is there. Is it superfluous? Is it last? Is it just excessive in a negative sense, or is it bound to something which is properly human insofar as it has a goal? And then what is the goal, and how do we understand that, and how do we kind of actualize that through our life and through our culture and so on, and through our ethics and all of that? So yeah, that's basically it for today. Subscribe. I haven't subscribed before. Thank you.